Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mrs. Reader's Readers, hanging out with Mrs. Hammond. Before we begin reading, I want to, of course, thank some people. I wish that I could just thank everyone and list everyone's names, but I have a couple of people that I want to thank, and they work at the high school. One person is just the most amazing person. I just love this lady. Her name is Mrs. Pam Lee, and she has taught school for like 50 years, I promise you. She is amazing, and she's still helping our students. She just inspires me so much. She walks into the room and she lights it up. She makes me laugh and is so intelligent and has so much knowledge. This lady does not know how much I just absolutely love her. She is my role model. She is my mentor. And I want to thank her for everything that she does for not only high school students, but for all the students. She is an instructional coach, and also she helps the students one on one. So she's an interventionist, but she is amazing. So a big shout out to Mrs. Pam Lee. Another person from the high school, and I used to teach at the high school, and I loved it there. Lots of great people. Absolutely loved my years there. Uh, is Mrs. Allison Duke. Now, Mrs. Duke is the high school counselor. I taught Allison. She was in my class in the third grade. She was a blast. Smart, witty, just awesome little girl. And I'll never forget one time when we were taking a spelling test and we were all quiet and Mrs. Hammond was walking around the room and Allison was looking me up and down like this. She wanted to see what Mrs. Hammond had on. And she looked at my shoes that day and she said, right in the middle of a spelling test, "What size shoe do you wear?" So I always tease Allison about this, and we all laugh. But I said, "Allison, we are taking a spelling test." So she was more worried about what size shoes I wore than taking the spelling test. But she is so awesome with the kids at the high school. She does so much for you guys. She's wonderful, and I'm just so proud of her. Also, her husband, Mr. James Duke, is one of our school board members, and they both are just awesome with teens. Even my grandkids in casual settings out on the lake, they love Mr. and Mrs. Duke. So I want to shout out to Miss Allison Bachman. Well, Duke. Her name used to be Mrs. Allison Bachman. When I taught her, it was just Miss Allison Bachman. Now it's Mrs. Duke. So shout out to high school, and that is Mrs. Pam Lee and Mrs. Allison Duke. Now let's get to our story. Did you know that we have been reading? Well, you do know it, but we have been reading Matilda. Matilda. Roald Dahl is the writer of Matilda, the author, and it is illustrated by Quentin Blake. The pictures in there are drawn by Mr. Quentin Blake. But this is so amazing. And you know what? I'm really thinking, I'm not for sure, but I think we might, maybe, I don't know, get done with this week. And if we do, I'm going to give you all the information so you can test and you will get 6 points. But I want to review it with you before we do that, okay? Anyway, last week I did not read on Friday. I got really busy and I didn't get to read. But our last chapter was the weekly test. Who can remember what we read on Thursday? That's right. Mrs. Trunchbull came into the classroom and she was going to teach the class, and it was just a disaster. I mean, she just was really terrible to those children, wasn't she? And what did they put in her water? Oh, there it is, that newt. But you know what? We have not seen the newt yet. They did put it in the water. So I'm thinking today is the day that we're going to see this newt in the water. That's going to be exciting. I'm going to read 2 chapters today. I'm going to read chapters 14 and chapters 15. And actually, I believe there's 21 chapters. They're not numbered, but I just numbered them for you guys. But I think we might can finish this. And I'm not going to promise anything, but I do have some vocabulary words. And the first chapter that we're going to read today is The Perfect Miracle. The Perfect Miracle. Well, maybe that newt has something to do with the perfect miracle. Let's look at some vocabulary first of all, though. Okay? This first word is prefects. And this word, these are senior students in the British school. So they don't just call them senior students like we do. They call them prefects. And so this is a term that's going to be used in this chapter. Okay? Carbuncle, I believe we might have had this before, but it was an infected boil or bump on the skin. Okay, you will also see that word again if we did. Reformatory. Have you ever heard of a reformatory? That's a reform school for youth. That's like if you've done something really terrible and you have to go somewhere and they put you in this reformatory. And this word here, this is called blancmange. Blancmange. Doesn't look like blancmange, doesn't it? It's a French dessert molded into a form of custard. And I have some pictures of this dessert. It looks really good. And you know what? I would love to make one since we are in quarantine. That would be a fun thing to do. I hope you can see these. I have it pulled up on my little iPad here. Can you see those molded desserts? They look lovely, don't they? And that's a blancmange. That's a French dessert. Wow. All right. Is everyone ready? I can't wait. The first miracle. Matilda sat down again at her desk, and the Trunchbull seated herself behind the teacher's table. It was the first time that she had sat down during the lesson. Then she reached out a hand and she took hold of her water jug. And then, still holding the jug by the handle, but not lifting it yet, she said, I have never been able to understand why children are so disgusting. They are the bane of my life. They are like insects. Oh, they should get rid of as early as possible. We get rid of flies and fly spray by hanging fly paper. Oh, I have often thought of inventing a spray for getting rid of small children. How splendid it would be to walk into the classroom with a gigantic spray gun in my hand and start pumping it. Oh, or better still, some huge strips of sticky paper. Oh, I would hang them all around the school and you'd all get stuck to them. Oh, and that would be the end of it. Wouldn't that be a good idea, Mrs. Honey? Well, if it's meant to be a joke, headmistress, well, I don't think that it's very a funny one, Miss Honey said from the back of the class. You wouldn't, would you, Miss Honey? The Trunchbull said. And it's not meant to be a joke. My idea of a perfect school, Miss Honey, is one that has no children in it at all. One of these days, I shall start up a school like that. I think it will be very successful. And the woman's mad, Miss Honey was telling herself. She's round the twist. She's the one who ought to be gotten rid of. Trunchbull now lifted that large blue porcelain water jug and poured some water into her glass. And suddenly, with the water out, came that long, slimy nut straight into the glass. Plop! The picture. The Trunchbull let out a yell and leapt off of her chair. Wah! As though a firecracker had gone off underneath her. And now the children also saw the long, thin, slimy, yellow-bellied lizard-like creature twisting and turning, in the glass. And they squirmed and they jumped about as well, shouting, what is it? Oh, it's disgusting. It's a snake. Oh, it's a baby crocodile. It's an alligator. Look out, Miss Trunchbull, cried Lavender. I'll bet it bites. The Trunchbull, this mighty female giant, stood there in her green breeches quivering like a blancmange. She was especially furious that someone had succeeded in making her jump and yell like that because she prided herself on her toughness. Now, it said she jumped and quivered like the blancmange. The blancmange, remember, is a French dessert molded into the form of custard. Custard sometimes shakes. Natural history was not her strong point, and she hadn't the faintest idea that this was. It has certainly looked extremely unpleasant, and slowly she sat down again in her chair, and she looked at this moment more terrifying than ever before. The fires of fury and hatred were smoldering in her small black eyes. "Matilda!" she barked. "Stand up!" "Oh, me?" Matilda said. "What have I done?" "You stand up, you disgusting little cockroach." "Well, I haven't done anything, Miss Trunchbull. Honestly, I haven't. I've never seen that slimy thing before." "You stand up at once, you filthy little maggot." Reluctantly, Matilda got to her feet. Oh, she was in the second row, and Lavender was in the row behind her, feeling a bit guilty. She didn't intend to get her friend into trouble, and on the other hand, she was certainly not about to own up to it. "You are a vile, repulsive, repellent, malicious little brute." The Trunchbull was shouting. "You are not fit to be in this school. You ought to be behind bars. That's where you ought to be. I shall have you drawn out of this establishment in utter disgrace. I shall have the prefects chase you down the corridor." It's the senior boys and girls. "And out of the front door with hockey sticks. Well, I shall have the staff escort you home under armed guard, and then I shall make absolutely sure that you are sent to a reformatory for delinquent girls for the minimum of 40 years. Trunchbull was in such a rage that her face had taken on a boiled color, and the little flecks of froth were gathering at the corners of her mouth. But then she was not the only one who was losing her cool. Matilda, she was also beginning to see red. She didn't in the she didn't in the least mind being accused of having done something that she had actually done. Well, she could see the injustice of that. It was, however, a totally new experience for her to be accused of a crime that she definitely had not committed. She didn't commit this crime. She had absolutely nothing to do with that beastly creature to that class. And by George, she thought that reason Trunchbull isn't going to pin this one on her. "I did not do it," she screamed. "Oh, yes, you did. You did," the Trunchbull roared back. "Nobody else could have thought of a trick like that. Your father was right. Oh, to warn me about you." The woman seemed to have lost control of herself completely. She was ranting like a maniac. "You are finished in the school, young lady," she shouted. "You are finished everywhere. I shall personally see to it that you are put away in a place where not even the crows can land their droppings on you. You will probably never see the light of day again. I'm telling you, I did not do it," Matilda screamed. "I've never even seen a creature like that in my life." "You have put a crocodile in my drinking water," the Trunchbull yelled back. "There is no worse crime in the world against a head mistress. Now you set yourself down and don't you say a word. You go on, sit down at once." "But I'm telling you," Matilda shouted, refusing to sit down. "I'm telling you to be quiet," the Trunchbull roared. "And if you don't be quiet at once and sit down, I shall remove my belt and let you have it with the end of this end of it, and that has the buckle." Slowly, Matilda sat down, and on the rottenness of it all, the unfairness, how dare they expel her for something that she had not done? Matilda felt herself getting angrier and angrier and angrier. So unbelievably angry that something was about to explode inside of her very soon. The newt was still squirming in the tall glass of water, and it looked horribly uncomfortable, and the glass was not big enough for it, and Matilda glared at that Trunchbull, and now she just could not stand her. Oh, she glared at that glass with the newt in it, and she longed to match up and grab that glass and tip the contents, the newt and all over the Trunchbull's head. She trembled to think what the Trunchbull would do to her if she did that, though. The Trunchbull was sitting behind the teacher's table, staring with a mixture of horror and fascination at the newt wiggling in the glass, and Matilda's eyes were also riveted on the glass. And now, quite slowly, they began to creep over Matilda's most extraordinary and peculiar feelings. The feelings were mostly in her eyes. A kind of electricity seemed to be gathering inside of them, and a sense of power was brewing in those eyes of hers. A feeling of great strength was settling itself deep inside of her eyes. But there was also another feeling, which was something else altogether. It was that she could not understand it. It was like flashes of lightning. Little waves of lightning seemed to be flashing out of her eyes. Her eyeballs were beginning to get hot, as though that vast energy was building up somewhere inside of them. It was an amazing sensation. Oh, she kept her eyes steadily on the glass, and now the power was concentrating itself in one small part of each eye and growing stronger and stronger and stronger. Oh, as though millions of tiny little invisible arms with hands on them were shooting out of her eyes towards the glass as she was staring at it. Tip it, Matilda whispered. Tip it over. Oh, she saw the glass wobble, and it wobbled. It actually tilted back a fraction of an inch and then righted itself again, and she kept pushing it as with all those million of invisible little arms and hands that were reaching out for her eyes, feeling the power that was flashing straight from the two little black dots in the very center of her eyeballs. Tip it, she whispered. Tip it over. Once more the glass wobbled. It wobbled, and she pushed harder still, willing her eyes to shoot out more power. And then, very slowly, so slowly she could hardly see it happening, the glass began to lean forwards, farther and farther and farther back, until it was bouncing on just one edge of its base. And there it teetered for a few seconds before finally toppling over and falling with a sharp tinkle on the desktop. The water in it and the squirming newt splashed all over Miss Trunchbull's enormous bosom, and the headmistress let out a "Yah!" that would have rattled every window pane in the building for more than the second time in the last 5 minutes. She shot out of that chair like a rocket. Oh, the newt clutched desperately at the cotton smock where it covered the great chest, and there it clung with the little claw-like feet, and the Trunchbull looked down at it, and saw it, and she bellowed even louder. With a swipe of her hand, she sent the creature flying across the classroom, and it landed on the floor beside Lavender's desk. And very quickly she ducked down, and she picked it up and put it into her pencil box for another time. I knew it, she decided, was a useful thing to have around. Oh, the Trunchbull, her face more like a boiled ham than ever, was standing before the class, quivering with fury. Her massive bosom was heaving in and out, and the splash of water down the front of her marked a dark, wet patch that had probably sunk right through to her skin. Who did it? Oh, she roared. Come on. You come up here. You step forward. You won't escape this time. Who is responsible for this dirty job who pushed it over this glass? Nobody answered the whole room, and they remained as silent as nobody answered. and the whole room remained silent as a tomb. Here's a picture of it. Oh, look at that newt. The newt right there. Just hanging on to her. She was scared to death. Matilda, she roared. It was you. It was you. I know it was you. Matilda in the second row sat very still and said nothing. A strange feeling of serenity and confidence was sweeping over her, and all of a sudden she found that she was frightened by nobody in this whole world. Oh, with the power of her eyes alone, she had compelled a glass of water to tip and spill its contents over the horrible headmistress, and anybody could do that. She could do anything. Speak up, you clotted carbuncle, roared the Trunchbull. Admit that you did it. Matilda looked right back into the flashing eyes of this infuriated female giant and said with total calmness, I have not moved away from my desk, Miss Trunchbull, since the lesson began. I can say no more. Suddenly the entire class seemed to rise up against the headmistress. She didn't move, they cried out. Matilda didn't move. And nobody moved. You must have knocked it over yourself. I most certainly did not knock this over myself, roared the Trunchbull. How dare you suggest a thing like that? Speak up, Miss Honey. You must have seen everything. Who knocked over this glass? Well, none of the children did, Miss Trunchbull, Miss Honey answered. I can vouch for it that nobody has moved from his or her desk in all this time you've been here except for Nigel, and he has not moved from this corner. Miss Trunchbull glared at Miss Honey, and Miss Honey met her gaze without flinching. I'm telling you the truth, headmistress, she said. You must have knocked it over without knowing it. That sort of thing is easy to do. I am fed up with you, useless bunch of midgets. Roared the Trunchbull. I refuse to waste any more of my precious time in here. And with that, she marched out of the classroom door, slamming the door behind her. In the stunned silence that followed, Miss Honey walked up to the front of the class and stood behind her table. Whew, she said, I think we've had enough for one day. Don't you? The class is dismissed, and you may all go out into the playground and wait for your parents to come and take you home. And that is the end of chapter 14. So, what do you think? Who do you think? Well, we know that Matilda made the glass fall over with her eyes. So Matilda has this magical power, and she did this. And that lady, she deserved it, that Miss Trunchbull. She is mean and horrible. And wasn't it funny when it jumped on her? And then what happened? She brushed it off and it flew across the room. And who took it? Yes, Lavender. Lavender picked it up and put it back in her box because maybe later on she might want to do something else with it. The next chapter is the second miracle. Oh, I have no idea. We have a word from the second miracle, and it's called seraphic. Seraphic are people with gentle, innocent faces, angel-like. Seraphic, angel-like people, faces, sweet. Okay, let's see what the second miracle could be. Matilda did not join the rush to get out of the classroom, and after the other children had all disappeared, she remained at her desk quietly and thoughtful. She knew that she had to tell somebody about what had happened with the glass. Well, she couldn't possibly keep a gigantic secret like that bottled up inside of her. Well, what she needed was to just one person, one wise and sympathetic grown-up who could just help her to understand the meaning of the extraordinary happenings. Who do you think that might be? Miss Honey? Yeah, I do too. Neither her mother nor her father would be of any use at all to her. And if they believed her story, and it was doubtful that they would almost certainly would fail to realize what an astounding event that it was that had taken place in the classroom that afternoon. On the spur of the moment, Matilda decided that the one person that she would like to confide in would be who? Miss Honey. Matilda and Miss Honey were now the only two left in the classroom, and Miss Honey had seated herself at her table and was rippling through the papers, and she looked up and said, "Well, Matilda, aren't you going to go outside with the others?" Matilda said, "Please, may I talk to you for just a moment?" "Well, of course you may. What's troubling you?" "Well, something very peculiar has happened to me, Miss Honey." Miss Honey became instantly alert. Ever since the two disastrous meetings that she had had recently about Matilda, the first with the headmistress and the second with the dreadful Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood, Miss Honey had been thinking a great deal about this child and wondering how that she would help her. Miss Honey had been thinking, and then now here was Matilda sitting in the classroom with a curiously exalted look on her face and asking if she could have a private talk. Miss Honey had never seen her looking so wide-eyed and peculiar before. "Well, yes, Matilda," she said. "Tell me what has happened to you that is so peculiar." "Miss Trunchbull isn't going to expel me, is she?" Matilda asked, "because it wasn't me that put that creature in her jug of water. I promise it was not me." "Well, I know it wasn't," Miss Honey said. "Am I going to be expelled?" "Oh, I think not," Miss Honey said. "The headmistress simply got a little overexcited, that's all." "Good," Matilda said, "but that isn't what I came to talk to you about after school today." "Well, what do you want to talk to me about, Matilda?" "I want to talk to you about that glass of water with the creature in it," Matilda said. "You saw it spilling all over Miss Trunchbull, didn't you?" "Well, I did indeed." "Well, Miss Honey, I did touch it. I didn't touch it. I never went near it, did I?" "Oh, I know you didn't," Miss Honey said. "You heard me telling the headmistress that it couldn't possibly have been you." "Oh, but it was me, Miss Honey," Matilda said. "That's exactly what I wanted to talk to you about, Miss Honey." Paused, and she looked carefully at the child. "And I don't think I quite follow you," she said. "I got so angry and being accused of something that I hadn't done that I had made it happen." "Made what happen, Matilda?" "I made that glass tip over." "I still don't quite understand what you mean," Miss Honey said gently. "I did it with my eyes," Matilda said. "I was staring at it and wishing it to tip over, and then my eyes were all hot and funny, and some sort of power just came out of them, and the glass just toppled over." Miss Honey continued to look steadily at Matilda, though her steel-rimmed spectacles, and Matilda looked back at her just as steadily. "I'm not following you," Miss Honey said. "Do you mean that you actually willed the glass to tip over?" "Yes," Matilda said, "with my eyes." Miss Honey was silent for a moment, and she did not think that Matilda was meaning to tell a lie. It was more likely that she was simply just allowing her vivid imagination to run away with her. "You mean you were sitting where you are now, and you told the glass to topple over, and it did?" "Well, something like that," Miss Honey said, and here's a picture. And Miss Honey has a glass that she's showing her, and she says, "You mean you actually made a glass like this topple over?" "Well, if you did that, then it just about is the greatest miracle a person has ever performed since the time of Jesus." "I did it, Miss Honey." "It is extraordinary," thought Miss Honey. "How often small children have flights of fancy like this." She decided to put an end to this as gently as possible. "Could you do it again?" she asked, not unkindly. "I don't know," Matilda said. "That I think I might be able to." Miss Honey moved the now empty glass to the middle of the table. "Well, should I put water in it?" she asked, smiling a little. "I don't think it matters," Matilda said. "Well, very well then, go ahead and tip it over." "Well, it may take some time." "Well, take all the time you want," Miss Honey said. "I'm in no hurry." So Matilda's sitting in the second row, and here's Matilda. She's sitting there. In the second row, about 10 feet away from Miss Honey, put her elbows on her desk and cupped her face in her hands. And this time she gave the order beginning at the right at the beginning. Tip the glass, tip it over. She ordered, but her lips didn't move and she made no sound. She simply just shouted the words inside of her head. And now she concentrated her whole of her mind and her brain and her will up into the eyes. And once again, much more quickly than before, she felt the electricity gathering and the power was beginning to surge and the hotness was coming into the eyeballs. And then the millions of tiny invisible arms with hands on them were shooting out toward the glass. And without making any sound at all, she kept on shouting inside of her head for the glass to go over. She saw it wobble and then it tilted and then it toppled right over and it fell with a tinkle onto the table, not 12 inches from Miss Honey's folded arms. Miss Honey's mouth dropped open, and her eyes stretched so wide that you could see the whites all around them. She didn't say a word. Oh, she couldn't. The shock of seeing the miracle performed had struck her dumb. She gagged at the glass, leaning away from it now, as though it might be a dangerous thing. And then slowly she lifted her head and looked up at Matilda. Matilda, she saw this child white on the face, as white as paper, trembling all over her eyes, staring straight ahead and seeing nothing, and the whole face was transfigured, the eyes round and bright, and she was sitting there speechless, quiet, beautiful in the blaze of silence. Miss Honey waited, trembling a little herself, and watched the child as she slowly stirred herself back into her consciousness. And then suddenly, click, her face went right back into a look at almost a seraphic calm. "I'm all right," she said and smiled. "I'm quite all right, Miss Honey. So don't be alarmed." "You seem so far away, Miss Honey," Miss Honey whispered, awestruck. I was flying past the stars on silver wings," Matilda said. "It was wonderful." Miss Honey was still gazing at that child in absolute wonderment, as though she were in the creation, the beginning of the world, the first morning. "Oh, it went much quicker than that. This time," Matilda said quietly. "It's not possible." Miss Honey was gasping. "I don't believe it. I simply don't believe it." She closed her eyes, and she kept them closed for quite a while. And when she opened them again, it seemed as though that she had gathered herself together. "Would you like to come back and have tea at my cottage?" she said. "Oh, I'd love to," Matilda said. "Good. You gather up your things, and I'll meet you outside in a couple of minutes. Oh, you won't tell anyone, will you, about this thing that I did, will you, Miss Honey?" "I wouldn't dream of it," Miss Honey said. And that's the end of chapter 15. And that was the second miracle. So Matilda has shared her miracle with Miss Honey. She not only shared what she told her, but she actually performed the miracle. So now Miss Honey, she believes it. She knows it's true because she actually saw it with her eyes, and she is amazed. And she asked Matilda to come back to her cottage with her. In the next chapter that we're going to be reading is Miss Honey's cottage. So I can't wait to see you guys for the next chapter. What two wonderful chapters. Don't have much to go in this book. We're already on chapter 16. Have a great day. I will see you later. Bye.